Glad to have you all back. So I've had an issue, even with this new riser, with the water coming up to somewhere around here while I'm going full speed, almost full speed. It's still sitting too low in the water. So what I'm going to be doing is a midsection swap, switching this from a long shaft to a short shaft, and getting rid of my riser, bringing it back down to the plate here. And that should get about where I need it. So stay tuned and we'll get this thing started. So my camera ended up dying, but as of right now, I have the engine, head, control head, all disassembled from the midsection. I've got the lower unit separated from the midsection. We're gonna go ahead and get all this stuff dismounted, get the swivel bracket taken off. We'll have to modify a couple parts. I'll show you as I go, but we'll get this swapped over to that midsection. So I got the shaft removed, so it's not hanging down in the way. And I've already loosened these screws a little bit to break them. We're gonna get all the caps loose and get this midsection loose. I got the covers off down here. I'm gonna start getting all this detached as well. So that's gonna take care of it for the moment. I have this completely off. I'm going to get these bolts out of here so that I can cut the top off and then put the bolts, the top bolts for the bracket, clamp bracket back into here. And I got to drill a hole here and here for the lower bolts. But we're going to reuse these plates. That way it's got a beefier block to grip onto, and it'll just sit lower, back down to the 2 inches lower. Also, as you can see, I got both swivel brackets ready here. This one I got to finish getting the reverse lock clamp pin out and get it moved over there. Otherwise, everything's ready to go. I still got to take my plate off as well. I do want to move that over to the new swivel bracket if I'm able to. It's got the fresh holes and it's a new unit. I'm getting ready to modify the exhaust tube. This is one of the things I couldn't get a hold of. The only difference, other than the cast number for the part number, is right here. That's my cutoff point for a short shaft. They actually put the base lip here in the mold, even on the long shaft ones. So we're gonna get that cut down, and that way it'll fit in. Now I have this sized for the short shaft. Also already got it deburred. It's not 100% smooth, but we'll be fine. Now the swivel shaft is, from my measurements, it should be right about at the bottom of this groove. I just happen to have the one with the groove already there. It helps so much with placement. And I like the nut on the end rather than the slip ring. And now she's cut into 2 pieces. That was the rough cut. I then smoothed it down for the most part. It's not perfectly level, but it's enough I can get that groove right there. You can see the edge of it. That's where I want to be at the top on the other side of this bracket. So on this side, I want it to sit roughly flat like that one is, but right at that groove. So we'll get that pressed out, work on getting this one pressed in and straight, and we will go from there. Now I went ahead and took the wood out of here to make it easier, so I didn't have to deal with it. And I'm just going to shave these down, leave them on here, and then I'll work on getting these bolts out. But I'm going to shave these 2 plates down to where they're not roughly flat against the bottom with this, and it'll allow the clamps to fully go over. Now I just got to clean her up. I got her pretty much leveled out. Just got to clean it up some, wipe it down, paint it, and we'll be able to start building the bracket back on. Now I have this freshly painted. I went ahead and drilled out those holes. I got those holes drilled. I got this completely mounted up and went over the whole thing. Paint, make sure it was covered. And now I just gotta let that dry and I'll be able to continue building. Sorry I didn't show it. I do have the new swivel bracket put on. This is the one for the short shaft. I just put this cross pin back in, and I have this boot on my arm. I just put grease in here. Every time this goes in and out, it's greasing the tube. So it helps keep it nice smooth. And I've already got the lock mechanisms for the reverse lock hooked up. I just have the pin in there for the time being, just to keep a hold of it, but it comes right down on the lock pin. just like so. So far, I've got the exhaust tube set up on here. I just have it sitting in here for the time being, but I got the exhaust tube installed. I've got the seal around the outside here installed. So this way, all that's ready and good to go. And then back on the swivel bracket, I've already got the shocks mounted. I am waiting for new pins to come in, as they are different on this one compared to the long shaft. So I'm waiting for the pins to come in so I can get those mounted up. And then the swivel pin itself, that I'm going to have to take to a machine shop. I'm working on that so I can get the old section pressed out and the new section pressed in. Next up, we have the water tube. This, with it being a straight piece of copper pipe, makes it really, really easy. I just measure it off of this, and it's about 4 inches off the top of the drive shaft. So when I do the rebuild on here, change out the drive shaft to the shorter shaft, I'll then measure it down 4 inches and cut that to size. There's a look at roughly how much fluid is actually in that lower unit. So I finally got the lower unit taken out. Make sure you pull the screw as well, or you won't be able to get it out at all. It ends up threading into the side here. So make sure you take that out, and this will come up a lot easier. So the pinion nut, I finally got loose. It took some real work trying to get that sucker off. Now we're just going to finish out getting this drive shaft out and getting this disassembled. It has been 2 weeks and I still cannot get the pinion loose off the drive shaft. I got it in a vise right now, so it's actually hanging all together. I ended up going ahead and buying another lower housing and all the components that I need that are stuck in there right now. But we're gonna assemble that, and then I'm gonna continue my attempt of trying to get that loose so I can at least have a backup housing just in case. Here is my old lower unit. Like I said, I'm gonna be still trying to get that out so I can still keep this as a backup extra. And then this is my newer lower unit housing. It did have the roller bearing down inside. I already got that knocked out. I'll show you the procedure on installing everything.
but I still got to work on finishing cleaning it out. But otherwise, it's in really good shape. Just some paint chipping and so forth. Like, I'll clean that up afterwards.
Now I've already installed the shift shaft, so which you can see in a previous video. One change though is the lock pin bevel right here. I got it swapped out with an all metal one instead of the plastic original one. So it's got a smooth ramp with sharp edges, just like original factory. Next component we're going to install is the lower bearing, roller bearing, which goes about right here, and we will be using a special tool to install that. So here's your roller bearing. What you want is the side with the numbers and letters to be facing up, because it's got the flat, smooth surface on this side, and it has to go up and fit snug in the cavity. So you're going to have that side up. There's the cup of the tool. It's going to go underneath and pull it upwards. And then you have this tool, which seats down into the cavity here and creates a solid mount. And then you screw this on to the bottom. Make sure you're lined up straight. And you're able to start tightening it up. Next, you're going to put in, this is the race seating tool. I'm going to put this straight in. Try to make sure the race is sitting straight so it goes in correctly. And then you're actually going to make use of your propeller shaft. That's going to go right in there. Next, this is to make use of your bearing carrier. I'm going to use this in order to keep it straight while I put this race in. Don't have to seat all the way, just enough to keep it straight. The tone you'll notice there, it's fully seated now. Pull this back out. And that race is now all the way in. Now here I'm getting ready to press on the main bearing that goes with the race onto the forward gear. Now it already has, as you can see, the roller bearing on the inside, so I won't have to worry about that. Just gotta get that lubed up so it's ready to go. But this, you want to make sure it's tapered out, or I guess in, like this, going on this way so it fits in the race correctly. We'll make sure that on nice and straight. Also make sure you have a little bit of oil or WD-40 or something on that, and that will help it slide onto the gear. I'm going to use my race block, the spacer, in order to have a nice flat surface to get this in. Just be careful as you bring it down. You'll feel when it bottoms out. As you can see, all the way down to the bottom. Might not be able to see it too well on the camera. And then seal it all the way here at the top. So we have our gear lubed up. Go ahead and put her in. Rolls very nicely and smooth. Next, we're going to go ahead and get the drive shaft put in so we can start getting the pinion gear lashing set. The drive shaft here, as you can see, I have in a vise. You want to have this loosely in here so it'll still slide, and you want to knock it down on the tapered end until it fully seats against the larger section right there. After you get that, it's hard to see, but the lock ring right here, I found it easiest to use the large screwdriver that you kind of have to use for lower unit screws, drain screws. I wedged it in here, got it past this lip, and then used this to knock it down all around here. Till it slipped down into place, and then you just want to make sure it fully seats, and that locks that bearing into place. Now the drive shaft, before you put it in, make sure you've got a couple of shims underneath here, because it's supposed to be shimmed first, and then make sure you get it to seat all the way down. Next, we're going to flip it back. Now we got that forward gear in, and we got our drive shaft here. It's roughly about right for the lash. Now we got to figure out the shimming for the rear gear. The old ones were really thin. So we're going to start off with a couple of the really thin ones. Place those right in front of the washer, the thrust washer. We have just a bit there in forward gear, just like before. Neutral. I got it up in reverse. We got roughly the same kind of gear lash. So I'll take this ring back out. It does help if you use your old ring for this process, just because you're knocking it in, knocking it out, knocking it in, knocking it out in order to find the right shims. But if you don't have the tool, it'll start eating away at the teeth. So use your old one first, and then use your new one when you're ready to lock it in. So just like last time, this is the stuff I use. It's the aviation form gasket sealant from Permatex. This stuff is great. It stays nice and pliable and tacky, even through the underwater conditions. A lot better than just regular gasket sealer. And what you want to do is a nice, even, light coat across all your threads. And yes, this takes a minute. It says to put it on both surfaces. I have not found anything causing any issue if I don't put it on the lower unit. Just usually try to make sure the threads have a generous amount while still being thin. So this stuff comes out brown. Basically just make sure all your thread slots are brown. A nice decent brown too, not just barely coating. You got to keep in mind that you're also putting this on for both surfaces since you're not putting it on the lower unit. So now it says to let it sit and tack up for just a little bit. So what we will do, leave it sitting there. So I've given it a few minutes to tack up. So that is ready to go in. We'll get this inserted. Make sure you have it on the side with the numbers and wording out, because that also shows your drill points, as you can see. So now we've gotten everything in the lower unit taken care of. New front gear, new pinion bearing and gears, new drive shaft that's shorter. Next we're going to take care of our water tube. So just like I said, 4 inches down from the top of the drive shaft. So it's going to put us roughly about where I put my mark from before. Right here I have a pipe cutter. I'll put it in roughly right about where I had it. And just use a pipe cutter. And we have a shortened tube. If we measure that out, that is right about at 4 inches. So that'll do it for the water tube. Now it's lined up. Now to finish out the lower unit, we have the prop, spacer, tab washer, nut. We'll get this locked down. And of course, don't forget your exhaust flange too. We'll make sure that's installed before you put your lower unit back in. And one more add-on upgrade we're going to do. New fin for this. This one actually sticks off a little bit further, help keep the water up underneath, and then it's got a nice profile to it too. This one you do not have to put bolts through. It has these spots on the sides. You put these short studs in and they press in against the plate. And then it's got an opening for the cab plate or anode.
I finally got the swivel pin back and got it modified to fit in here, and it is all ready to go. And we'll get that set up, get that midsection installed. Now what I ended up doing, I decided to get a newer version. I looked up outboards that had the old swivel pin with the nut, and then also used the newer one with the lock ring. That way I knew it would fit on here before I got that modified. This will slide all the way up to lock in, but the lock ring was really fun trying to figure that out. What I did is I wedged it on the end of this down to around here. I put it up with the back into the groove and slid it on as far as I could. It was right here at the lip, and I just took a hammer and knocked it until it popped into place. So if anybody's ever having any issues with that, there's a trick for it. I now have the midsection mounted up. Right now I just have these in place and pushed in. I've still got to secure those. I went ahead and secured just because it was hard to manage the camera. And this, my other camera is dead at the moment. But I got this tightened down. The nut in here is nice and snug. Now I just have to secure the bolts back here, and the midsection will be secured to the swivel shaft. Also need to put the safety band on here and run the bolt through. So here's a quick look at the progress. We got the new midsection installed. You can tell how short that is now. And then we got the engine all fully mounted, and all components are rehooked back up. So the engine is all set to go. I do need to check a couple grease points in here. Otherwise it's set. Go ahead and get that engine cover put on the side. and we'll get that lower unit installed.
Make sure this piece is getting inserted the correct way. You have it line up with your shift shaft right here, and then your lock pin goes in that one. Now I do want to make sure this is pointed out as well. Normally you would go off of here, go off the cav plate, and make sure it lines up with the bottom of the boat. But in my case, I have a setback with this trim unit, so I actually have to raise it in order to get it to work. So as you can see, I got it all put back together. New lower unit rebuilt with the new drive shaft. I got the new shorter midsection, new swivel bracket, all installed now. Next thing, get a nice clean done on it, clean everything up, and then I'm going to be doing some touch up on the paint. Get this all looking really nice, and we'll get her back on the water. Well, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. If you have any questions, comments, make sure to hit me up in the comment section. And I will see you in the next one.